The Voice Teacher Podcast.
Hey there, welcome to the Voice Teacher Podcast, brought to you by the International Voice Teachers of Mix. I'm Amy Geddes. My co-host is Sam Johnson, and we have a special guest for you today, John Henny. Round of applause. Woo! So, John, we have been looking forward to having you on the podcast. You probably don't know this, but we've talked about having you on here for a while because you are kind of the inspiration for this podcast. For those of you that don't know John, basically you are the professional of professional vocal coaches. Many of your clients are celebrities or have been in the past. You train teachers across the world with your courses and programs. You've been on the IVTOM advisory board since it was created. And John is extremely knowledgeable in the science of the voice, as well as the performance and the mindset of the voice, as well as he's really good at marketing and helping teachers learn how to market themselves, run their studios, and be better teachers all around, taking them from start to finish. So anyway, we've been really excited to have John because a while back we were in IVTOM just talking about some of the things that we needed to do to take the organization farther. And I came across John's book, Voice Teacher Influencer. And you talked about doing a podcast. And I was like, ta-da, light bulbs. This is what we need to do. And so thus was born the podcast. So we're like your kids, basically.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, well, I mean, just to keep hyping you up a little, you really do seem to be kind of this jack of all trades who is like at the highest level of pretty much every trade within the industry. Something that has always really impressed me is just your marketing stuff. I mean, you've seemed to be on the cutting edge of whatever the next thing everyone's going to talk about, both in terms of your marketing stuff and a few years ago, like you had a hour and a half recording talking about formants that I would listen to, I think, every single night just to try to internalize all of that stuff. And it was like right before that became such a big talking point. My main question is, how did you get to where you are? Like, where did you even start your teaching journey?
Yeah, my journey to voice was a rather kind of like a drunkard's walk, they would say. It wasn't a straight line. I can remember my father, who was from Glasgow, Scotland, was just a beautiful natural singer. And as a child, when I would try and sing, I would hear his booming Glaswegian voice say, "That's bloody terrible." As the
I feel like I'm in How to Train Your Dragons. I love that.
Yeah, he didn't mince words. And so I started playing the drums, and I actually had some innate talent for the instrument. I think that was the instrument I got better on than anything else. And I started playing professionally in my teens. And in my early 20s, I figured I'd never sing. A roommate of mine said, "Hey, I'm studying with this guy, and his teacher is the Stevie Wonder's teacher." And I went, "Let me give this a try. Maybe I'll be able to sing some backup vocals." And within about a year and a half, I actually moved where I was singing lead. And I got an independent record deal that went belly up, as those things often do. And then I got another offer for a record deal as a drummer in this project I played on. And by that time, I was in my early 30s and I had kids. I'm like, I don't want to go live in a van with a bunch of guys. So my teacher had recommended teaching. And I thought, oh man, I could never do that. And I remember him just saying, "Well, at least you won't hurt anybody." So with that lofty goal of at least not hurting anybody, I started teaching and found that I really enjoyed it, and was able to, just using the tools that I knew from my own voice, kind of haphazardly, but realized, oh, okay, this makes this happen, and I can get this result. And started to hear, wow, this vowel thing. I didn't understand why, for me, an or even an ah vowel was so much easier than an oo or an e. I'm like, why can't I sing these vowels? I'm just changing the shape of my mouth. Why would it make what's happening at my throat any different? And then I attended a lecture by Dr. Donald Miller, and walked out completely confused, but I knew I need to figure out what this is. And so then I just really became enamored of voice acoustics. And even though I'm certainly not a scientist, I think one of the things I could do is I could just go get what made sense to me and how I was able to use it and then explain it to other teachers. And then I see these teachers now, they're discussing things in terms of acoustics where I'm going, wow, I need to go study that. It's just interesting to watch students and people you've helped surpass you. It's inspiring and humbling at the same time.
I love what you said about I'm at least not going to mess anyone up. That's on my worst days. I still kind of fall back on that of, I can't do this. I'm really in my head. I'm feeling very anxious about teaching. I know I'm not going to mess anyone up. And that has always been a really nice fallback. And with trying to encourage some of my students to teach, that's kind of my base level of like, yeah, I'm comfortable putting my name on you. Like, go teach. You're not going to mess anyone up. I just love that idea.
That's a great point. And I think teachers should understand that for me, learning to teach singing was kind of like learning to play poker. And I'm not a very good poker player, but I became rather frustrated because I'd look at the books and they'd go, okay, when you're in this position and there's a raise and you're holding this hand and the board shows this, I wanted to know, what should I do? And beyond the very simple aspects of the game, the answer became, it depends. And so many times with teaching, we want these concrete answers, and it really is, it depends. And some days, and with some students, it just becomes, let's not hurt this person. Because yeah, we do get in our own heads. I remember a few times. One time I was on a teaching trip and I had a lot of people observing me. And when people observe a lesson, it of course changes the nature of the lesson. And I found myself getting in my own head, and I was thinking, oh yeah, here's this student. I'm going to make some really great breakthroughs and just show these teachers, and nothing was working. And you start to feel the flop sweats and the whole pressure. And I remember after that student was done and I had a break, and I just went outside and said, you got to just calm down and refocus on the student. And some days there's not going to be that breakthrough. There's not going to be that magic. And you're just helping in any way that you can without your own ego getting involved. And when I find myself not teaching at my optimal level, it's when the ego starts to creep in.
Well, I think knowing what you're capable of and having the proof that you've been able to do that before really sets up that expectation that, why should I not be able to do this every single time that I sit in front of a student? In the same way that a lot of students come to me and they're like, I swear I've been practicing. I was able to do this just perfectly yesterday, and now I just can't do it anymore.
Yeah, that's very, very common. And students need to realize that, these are peaks and valleys, right? And it really is in our teaching, in our business, in our singing life. It's when we're in the valleys, what we do there is what sets up the peaks. And when things are going well, it's very often the complacency and the ego is what sets up the next valley. Yeah, we have to just really be open, let go of ego. All I know is the older I get, the less I seem to know. I was like, man, I was really sure of what I knew 15 years ago.
I think we've talked about that a few times on the podcast, how we've all experienced that, like thinking when you first start teaching, you feel like you don't know anything, but at the same time, you feel like you have to prove that you know everything. And so you kind of get in this vicious cycle of like, I'm a teacher. I have to know, and I have to have all the answers, rather than it's okay to say you don't know. It's okay to say,
I mean, there's that whole Socratic idea of true wisdom is knowing that you know nothing.
It's true. But beginner's mind, all of those things. And I see younger teachers and they get caught up in imposter syndrome. And it's like, well, first of all, we all have imposter syndrome. And and to a degree, it's healthy. It keeps you humble. It keeps you going. It keeps you pushing. but you can't totally give over into it. That's one of the things I really tried to focus on in my book, Voice Teacher Influencer, is don't fall into imposter syndrome, and don't, hell is comparing yourself to others, right? And it's what we tend to do as human beings. And you've really got to realize that whoever you are as a teacher, you have experiences and you have things that brought you to this point that I don't have, and you don't have, right? So this teacher is able to approach things in a way that's unique to them, and people really need to celebrate what makes them unique rather than thinking, oh, but I don't have this teacher's experience or this teacher's training. Keep getting experience, keep getting training, but you really, really have to honor and celebrate what is unique about you.
I love that. That makes me feel so much better, honestly.
I'm glad.
Because I think we've all worried that, oh, I don't play the piano like so and so, and I haven't been on Broadway, and I haven't done this or that. But like what you're saying, you just have to honor what is unique about you. Kind of going back to when you first started teaching, this is on my mind because I'm mentoring a few teachers right now, and one I'm taking from scratch. She's just barely opening up her studio. And I built my studio over the last 20 years. I started with just a couple students, and, I have enough people to teach as much as I want to teach. And so, but when you're just starting out, when you're helping these brand new teachers figure out how to open their studio, what approach do you take, especially if they're, needing to produce an income? How do you help them get from just starting to filling up their schedule? What kinds of things do you have them do?
So the first thing I have them do is really do a self-inventory and ask themselves, who do I like to teach? What do I think my special skills are? And get very, very clear on that. And then you can create what they call an avatar, which is an exercise where you write down who your perfect student is, or who your ideal student is, and what this person's interests are, what their goals are, what their hesitation to having lessons or obstacles may be. And then you start to talk to and address this person. So obviously you want to get a website going. The big mistake I see people make in their websites, and they don't do this consciously, but we just tend to make it about ourselves. When they say, why should I study with you? Your first answer is going to be, well, I've had so many years of voice lessons, and I sang here, and I'm a member of this organization. And we just start to list all this, when what you really need to do constantly is show people how you can help them, and really talk to this potential client and show them, think of their journey when they first make contact with you. What are they seeing on your website? What type of articles do you have? Do you have freebies that they can download? Make it so that they can easily begin a dialogue with you. A very simple funnel that people can do is they can, if they come to your website or they find you on social media, is you can have a low cost vocal assessment. Don't do it for free. Free is just going to bring in the wrong person, and you want to start that person giving you some amount of money. Even though it's low cost, there's a transaction there. And so that kind of breaks that barrier. And so they're more likely to spend money later. And in that assessment, work with them and talk in the future tense about, okay, when we're working together, I have these goals for you. I see you working on this. Within so many months, I can see this aspect of your voice settling down or becoming more balanced. And then don't be afraid to gently ask for a sale. I think that's where people get hung up a little bit. There are all different ways to reach out in your community. Again, what your audience is. If your audiences are kids, if you really enjoy working with kids, you might reach out to homeschool organizations in your area. If you want to work with professional singers, that's a different step. You might want to see which ear, nose, and throat doctors are working with singers in your area and introduce yourself and start a relationship there. So it really is important to get clear about who you want to work with and how.
So it kind of brings up the idea of a mid-career pivot for me, of like we might do all of these, work with a certain clientele for a while just to pay the bills, but then decide we want to do something a little bit different. And I feel like I've seen you do a few of those pivots, John. Like a decade ago, I remember you saying, if I ever wrote a book, it would be one page and it would say, and now you've written how many books? And
3.
I feel like that, like, what got you to finally sit down and say, I'm going to write these books and have it be more than one word?
That's a great question. So I had multiple failed attempts at writing a book. And I'd maybe get like a chapter in, or I'd do a breakdown. And I forget what actually got me to take it seriously, but I can tell you the process. And the process is just setting yourself up in a habit. So what I did to write my first book is I took, what is the name? It's the Pomodoro method, which is
Pomodoro.
Pomodoro. There you go. Thank you. Which is named after the tomato timers that you'll often see in kitchens. The idea is you set a timer for 25 minutes and you work without distraction. And then the timer goes off, and then you set it for 5 minutes and take a break, and then set it for another 25 minutes. And what I did is every day I got up and I worked for an hour, 25 minutes, 5-minute break, 25 minutes. And then I just set it aside. And at the end of a certain number of weeks, I just remember every day I was working on it. And then one day I went, oh, hey, I just finished this first draft.
Did you ever reach the end of your hour and you were just in the thick of it, and you were flowing, and you were like, I just want to keep going? Did you ever extend past the hour to maybe 2 or 3 hours or something?
I never went 2 or 3, but there were days I certainly went, 90 minutes. I may have done a couple of hours here and there, but I found when you go to do a project like this, you are instantly going to go into resistance, and your brain is going to go, wow, maybe you should go floss, or the hedges need trimming, or I'm suddenly hungry, right? And the phone, don't even get me started with social media, right? So what that technique does is you put everything away, you put your computer on do not disturb, and I wrote just on a piece of software that was just focused on writing the book. I didn't have a browser open or anything. So that, and then if I was doing research, I could just very specifically go and find my research. I would just put everything in Evernote, which is a program I think is really handy for that. So for that 50 minutes, it's interesting. Once you get past resistance and you eliminate distraction and you get into flow, it just flies by. And you're suddenly writing in a day, you're writing like 1,000 words. And you don't want your book, seriously, people don't want to read Gone with the Wind. People don't want an 800-page book on singing.
I love Gone with the Wind. What are you talking about?
Which is great.
I actually really do.
No, I understand that, but they don't want War and Peace. Let's pick that book. Actually, if it's a short book of value, that's what people want. Mm-hmm. And that's a great piece of advice I got from somebody, even in terms of doing courses. You think like, oh, I'm going to get it to where it's 50 hours of video, and that's going to be my selling point. The person looking that's going, I don't want to watch 50 hours of video. Because the bottom line, look, is if we developed a pill, and this pill, if you took it, would instantly make you a great singer, we could sell that pill for a lot of money. And that pill would be far more valuable than your 50 hours of video. So if you can create something that's very concise and focused, but you're selling the result, you're not selling the course itself, you're selling the result of the course. That's really what people should focus on. It's just really results. Show people, tell people the results you can get for them.
No, I love that. That's really helpful. I've been working on my manuscript for a really, really long time. And I find that I get in these sequences where I'll work kind of in that hour a day for a week, and then I'll get so impatient and I'll switch it up to like 5 or 6 hours a day, and I'll just blast through it. And I get a lot done, and then I let it sit for a year. And that cycle, I think, is pretty unsustainable. But when you look at any of these large projects, like a book or like an album or anything, like, it requires hundreds of hours. And so you have to figure out a way to stay at it to get those hundreds of hours. You can't just stay up for 100 hours and have something good most of the time.
No. And I'll let you in on what I really discovered is the starting is the easy part, because there's the burst of creativity. The finishing is the really hard part. And my last book, Beginning Singing, I remember just getting stuck on the cover, and there was a cover design that actually wasn't all that good. The graphic was kind of cheesy in that, it was just a silhouette of somebody with a microphone, and then there was an audience member's hand, and it was just placed in a way on the cover that it looked a little funny where it was at in the singer's silhouette. And my wife goes, "You can't use that." And I remember just almost having a tantrum, going, "That's it. I quit. I can't." Like, getting that book finished, the push of the rewriting to the cover was just so laborious that I really did want to give up. So just know, on these projects, you are going to hit another wall of resistance, because when you have your manuscript that you work on, all it is possibilities. But when you actually go to press that button to publish, now it is reality of, ooh, this can fail. People cannot like this. Here are possible criticisms, right? And the trolls and all of these things that none of us enjoy. That's all I can say. My best advice is, when you're going to hit that wall, and that's when you got to push.
That's interesting you say that, because I've been working on a course that, oh my goodness, to me in technology, it's not like I don't know how to use a computer or anything, or the basic things, but man, you just get one little thing and you hit a little bit of a wall, or like your connection's a little bit slow and you're just like, oh, I don't have the patience for this. I'm doing something else. And so my course is just sitting there, like halfway uploaded to the website and halfway ready to go, but not finished, And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is going to be outdated by the time I get it done. So it was kind of a guinea pig project for me, but.
So if I was consulting with you, I would say you take that course that's half uploaded and you start selling it now. And you go through that process, and then you just have on the other modules coming soon. And you go through that scary process of getting your first customers, of the first person that says, "I don't like this course, I want my money back," of the potential problems. But that hump, right? You're in resistance right now with your course. You've got to put it up for sale.
I've been in resistance for a while now, because I started this.
Put it up for sale now. And when I say that to you, that probably feels scary, and your stomach goes, ooh, and that's what you got to push through.
You're so right, because I'm sitting here thinking about all the hurdles I got to overcome. I was not a hurdle jumper in high school, that's for sure. I'm 4'11".
You
John.
just go.
That did not
you
happen
go
for me.
I like to watch shows. I'm fascinated with like restaurant business, because that's such a competitive, low margin, stressful business. And I was watching a documentary on a restaurateur, and he was opening this big restaurant, huge project. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, "There are a number of problems, but we won't know what they are until we open." And I thought, wow, that's just his experience, but it's also this bravery of just open the doors, and then we will deal with the problems. Then they will show themselves. So the things that you're worried about, technology, all of these things, when you put your course up for sale, now you're going to find where the problems are. But the great thing about online is you can fix things, you can change things, you can go back. I published my book, and then after an editor and all of these people having eyes on it, I'm going to do the audiobook, and I'm going, there's a typo. There's a typo. That sentence really reads awkwardly, but you can go back in and change it. The other thing I really recommend is when you go to do something like this, you need to have people in your life, in your circle, that are going through the same journey and can help and inspire you. So that's why I invest a lot of money in business coaching and business masterminds. I'm not talking about just being in a Facebook group where it's kind of just people prattling on, and there are some things of value, and then Facebook itself is just set up for distraction. But I mean, I'm in a weekly call with entrepreneurs, and actually I'm in a couple of masterminds, and some of these people, they're selling music courses. These people are making near 6 figures a month with online courses. When you're surrounded by people like this, you start to see the possibilities. That's why it's really important that teachers be in organizations like IvTom, because when you're completely out there on your own, it's really hard. I don't care how much you know. I've seen it where very knowledgeable teachers, and they start to get some success, and they just become these silos, and they really kind of stop growing from what I can see, and they're not really involved in the conversation, and they're not being challenged in a healthy way. I remember at an IvTom conference, and I was up front doing my presentation. I was working with a singer who was really talented. I was trying to get him in on this note, and I just wasn't getting there. And Dean Kalin just popped up his hand and said, "Hey, can I try?" And I'm like, "Sure." And I watched Dean teach one of the best lessons I've ever seen in my life. What he did was like, wow. It was actually really eye-opening for me to just see somebody in that high-pressure situation do that. And it was like, man, I love the way he did that. That was really instructive. That was something, I was close, but I missed that. And if you're not going to things like that, and if you're not putting yourself in those situations, and if you're not being humbled once in a while, you're missing out.
Wonderful. Where can people find you, John? What are you most proud of recently?
What I'm most proud of recently is, you can find me at John Henny, JohnHenny.com. My most recent project is voiceschool.com. And that is a membership where people not only have courses made by myself and others, but we also have our own private forum. We have a number of monthly coaching calls, and then we also have one-on-one vocal check-ins that are included with your membership, that anytime you feel stuck, you just get on and book a one-on-one call with one of my voice experts, and they can get you unstuck.
I love it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you. It's always fun to prattle on.
Well, thank you so much for watching/listening. Go check out John Henny. If you are interested in teaching or anything, go to ivtom.org/events and get some of our conference recordings. They are very good. And we have some with John teaching, like the 2018, I believe, in Denver has some really good John talks on it. So go check that out.
If you're interested in becoming a teacher and want to get an IvTom mentor, head over to ivtom.org and fill out an application. If you're starting from scratch, you can get a mentor. But if you've been teaching for a while and want to take your skills to the next level, you can also get a mentor. We have fabulous teachers with dozens of years of experience, and you can't go wrong with any of them. So, head over and check that out too.
Thank you for listening to the Voice Teacher Podcast, brought to you by IvTom, International Voice Teachers of Mix. Your co-hosts are Sam Johnson and Amy Geddes. Learn more about IvTom at ivtom.org and find Sam Johnson at vocalese.net and Amy Geddes at breakthrough-studios.com. Voiceover and theme song by Maz Mazak, and this podcast is edited by Amber. You have been listening to the Voice Teacher Podcast.